live. We're here. Clay and Van, welcome. We're going to be talking about pandemics. We're going to be talking about captives. We were having a conversation before we started rolling. Van, Clay, why don't you introduce yourselves?
Clay, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I do national business development for strategic risk alternatives, and I've been with the company going on 3.5, 4 years now. It's been a lot of fun, constantly talking to people about these types of programs that they may not know exist, and or our program looks a little bit different to them, and it's very applicable to small to mid-market businesses across the board, and we're trying to help them, find a way to more effectively manage their risks that they have.
Yeah. Yep. Van?
Yeah, so Van Carlson, founder and president of Strategic Risk Alternatives. Been in risk management for almost 30 years now. I would consider it pretty much my professional life. I got involved in this concept back in 2008 of owning some kind of your own insurance company. I had a very successful property casualty agency. I was in the upper 1% producers. I had 4 or 5 agents working under me, and fairly sized office. I had 6,000 to 7,000 policyholders, and 2008 came along, and I was introduced to the concept. But to be quite honest with you, I was never really interested in talking to business owners about owning some kind of form of their own insurance company, especially. I was busy. The world was it was a busy time, right?
And insurance was covering pretty much everything anyways. Why would a company need to do that?
Yeah, why would you transfer the risk for pennies on the dollar? We've had a soft market for forever, right? I mean, the premiums weren't going up per se. They were limiting more and more exposure, especially in hurricane districts and stuff like that. But for the most part, though, I was like, man, I don't have time to learn this, understand this, and everything else. And of course, here comes 2008. And these were just like everybody else in the property casualty business that, agents, clients, they become friends. These are business leaders in the communities typically. And, they're struggling to stay alive during the financial downturn. And, I witnessed business owners that had these tools and they thrived in 2008, 2009, and 2010. And I just thought, man, this is what smart money does. This is the way to mitigate risk, And I've been telling clients for a long time now, if you're having really good years, just to put a little bit take a little bit off the top and park it off to the side is risk mitigation 101. Unfortunately, there is no incentives to save money given their current tax structure, especially when it comes to business owners. Business owners understand the 172 accelerated depreciation really well. And who doesn't like buying stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but that's not great for small middle market business owners. I thought this more of a way to help business owners bring better strategies than just taking it and borrowing more money or doing all the things that they have a propensity to do, which, in downturns, whether it's economy, pandemics, natural catastrophes, we're on a global basis now. So when you talk about supply chain risk comes from a lot of, that can hit you in any different kind of categories.
Sure.
And then of course, political risk, dealing with foreign governments, relying on your product to get here. So there's a variety of risks that goes into these things. They're much more complicated today than they've ever been.
Okay. So what precipitated this particular discussion is that, we're in the middle of COVID-19. Pretty much every other article I'm reading in the insurance journals and the insurance blogs has to do with what's covered, what's not covered. And for the most part, this isn't covered, right? So this is caught.
Actually, it was covered until SARS came out. And when SARS came out, some of the big carriers realized they had some interpretation issues. And they actually lost in court on a couple cases for business interruption. Yeah. So they specifically then after that excluded in their contracts that anything that's pandemic or requires quarantine will be excluded from the policy under business interruption.
Yeah.
That's under even contingency business interruption policies. So it's gotten more defined because we've had more pandemics. Now we may not have taken it as severely as we are today. I think this is probably the first time in our lifetime, and maybe even our country's history, that we've had these types of situations where entire economy is basically being shut down.
Yeah, I mean it's unprecedented, right?
Yes.
And given that it's not covered, even if it was Clay and Van, I mean it would put the industry under a lot of stress. I mean, there'd be a lot of insolvencies of some very big companies if this were to occur. But the thing that where I just find this conversation so timely is that there's not going to be any rush to go and provide coverage. This isn't. Most insurers are not going to view this as an opportunity. So this is a giant risk management hole.
Well, look at cyber, Nick. I mean, cyber, they haven't really done a great job with cyber. They're not in a big hurry to increase their risk of appetite for risk when they're doing pretty good now. So, you put we thought cyber was the big risk small businesses were facing. We kind of knew in the background it was business interruption first and foremost, because the world's gotten complicated and always has been, but it just keeps, the world keeps shrinking, right? Due to information, due to technology and everything else. And when that happens, it's a potentially unforeseen risk that, to your point, and you even think about. Apologize for that. I thought I shut my voice off on my cell phone.
We're not live. No one listening cares.
And so, the point there is the business interruption part of it. And the thing is as time goes on, to your point, I don't think the insurance industry has zero interest to create better coverages for business interruption.
Yeah, and they wouldn't even know how to price that out, how to manage the risk. I mean, it's just basically
it's catastrophic, right? They don't want to cover earthquakes and hurricanes, and for that matter, you know what I mean. So it's like a good example. The reason that we even do what we do today is because of that tax code called 831B, which allows small business owners to own some kind of form of their own insurance company. And there's tax advantages to the 831B tax code, which we can absolutely talk about. But if you go back to 1986, when the Tax Reform Act of 1986 was introduced, and I was still in high school. I'll just tell everybody that right now. I wasn't paying attention. But when you look back at that Reform Act, it was a massive change to the way a lot of Americans did things. I mean, up until then, all interest rates were deductible, for example. After 86 Tax Reform Act, only in mortgage interests were deductible now. So there was a lot of changes. Congress is being run by a Democrat. We had a Republican in Executive Reagan, and we had a House Speaker, Tip O'Neill. And what was happening back then was crop insurance. Crop insurance used to be in the private sector. What happened during those mid 80s was private sector was getting out of it. It was unprofitable, just like earthquake zones and hurricanes and all those things. Private sector was getting out of it, and Congress had to come up with a way to create an incentive for farmers to basically cover their own crop insurance.
Yeah.
Today now, the biggest crop subsidies there are out there right now is crop insurance, and it's literally 100%. The premium is 100% subsidized, meaning if the farmer puts up $1, the federal government matches it with another $1. And it's a complete 100% business interruption policy, which means it's as if the crop was sold. Is how if the infestation, drought, fire, it has nothing to do with the market pricing or anything like that. It has everything to do with damages to the crop.
Sure.
That was beyond the control of the farmer. That's a straight up business interruption policy. So that was even why it was created back in 1986. Now, you fast forward now, what is that, 32 years, 34, no, so 14 and 24 years ago. Think about how the age of information since then, the complication of life when it comes to trying to understand supply chain. It's magnified so much more on risk. And so, that's why we've been talking to clients. So I started this in 2008, Strategic Risk Alternatives. We're insurance managers. We help our clients manage their own insurance company. We recognize risks they can't insure for. or they're self-insuring the
Yeah.
risk now, and they're just going to use after-tax dollars to fight the fight. And unfortunately, most of our business owners, I mean, I was just listening to a report today, most of your small to middle market business owners have about 30 to 60 days of cash flow in their pipeline. And, cash flow is constantly being replaced with new dollars being, as customers come in, the transition of customers and selling and buying products, right? When that valve gets cranked down like it is today, you're looking at 30, 60 days of cash flow, which means, and we tell our clients very, very calmly that the greatest intangible asset, and that's really what we're trying to talk to clients about, is the intangible assets of their business. And unfortunately, a lot of times, well, it's not unfortunately, most clients will value the intangible assets of their business much more than the tangible, right? And that's the blue sky, that's the cash value, the brand in their community, their product they bring to the table. That's the value they have in their business. However, I tell clients all the time, traditional insurance companies do a really good job insuring traditional insurances. Fire, theft, vandalism, smoke damage, vandalism to buildings, general liability, the right to defend. All those things have great value from a business owner standpoint. Where comp's great. I mean, there's a lot of things that traditional insurance companies do really, really well. But it's really tied to the tangible assets of the business, right? The buildings, the vehicles, those types of things. So when a client's more worried about the intangible assets of their business, then how do they mitigate that risk better? And when you're self-insuring the risk, we show them how to do it more valuable. And again, I tell clients very plainly, the greatest intangible asset of any business is your cash flow of your business. It's undeniable. Yeah. And I think that's kind of weighing it out right now.
Yeah. So that's what we're getting to the gist of, right? It's given the environment that we're in, there's going to be a lot of demand for, hey, I never want to go through this again. Right. And so, and that's going to be everything from the very, very large companies to where does this start? And let's let Clay talk a little bit. Sorry, Clay. At what point, like, should the mom and pop pizza place be thinking of this? When you guys are trying to structure this, what is the bottom of the company size where this starts to make sense? And can you just give a little bit of description of where it's ideal, where it's almost a no-brainer versus the gray area? Kind of give us some context for anyone that's listening so we can try to understand how this can help industry. You want to take
that?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and answer. I mean, on average, our client sizes range between $1 million in revenue to 15, 20 million in revenue. With the bulk of our clients being somewhere in that 1 to 10 million in revenue, gross revenue spot.
That's actually lower than I thought.
Yeah,
that's considered small business.
Sure. Yeah, and that's really where most of our clients sit. Our program really is built for that purpose. There's a lot of captives out there that, just cost structures alone, you have to have more revenue and it costs a lot more than ours. But that's really where strategic risk alternatives fits.
That makes a lot of sense. So I started to think, like, let's take pandemic. So let's take a company, let's say $10 million in revenue, looking for business interruption insurance for a pandemic. They never want this to happen again. They reach out to strategic risk alternatives. How does it work?
So just so you know on that, Nick, I mean, one of the things that when we built our program, my clients were the small to middle market business owners. And so when we built the program, we wanted to be fee sensitive. We wanted to be flexible in the markets because, there's some years where guys can't, they had a downturn year for whatever reason. Owning your own insurance company shouldn't have to kill the goose, right? So we were very fee sensitive, which also allowed us to bring in more clients that can take advantage of based on pricing where it made sense for them. We have 14 core risks that we've recognized that clients are currently self-insuring for. This past year, I say past year, 2019, we introduced a new policy to our suite of policies, third-party business interruption. What we were starting to watch was third-party business interruption, and that's a perfect example of this pandemic thing. So we're seeing a lot of triggering of that policy right now. And what we mean by third-party business interruption is for example, we have a lot of elective surgeries have gone away. They're either shut down or if they're not necessary, then they're shut down. So there's not, all the referrals stopped. So when doctors are doing elective surgeries, a lot of times they rely on other doctors to refer them patients. That's dried up. That's a third-party business interruption. We see it. When we first designed the program, to be quite honest with you, we were relying more on your CRM systems, right? Your customer management systems, your cloud servers, right? So if I'm relying on XYZ to hold my information in the cloud and it was compromised somehow, that's third-party business interruption, right? So we always talk about direct and indirect losses. Is it a direct loss or indirect? And again, traditional insurance companies traditionally do a very good job with direct losses when it comes to business interruption. That means there was a fire on the property and I can't do business anymore. Typically it comes with an 18-month policy with another 6-month business contingency on it. So great coverage, but these indirect losses become an issue. For example, we talk about so anytime you rely on a third party to provide business for you and they're interrupted, that would trigger that. So this would be a good example for that. Political risk. I mean, our state, we live in Idaho. I live in Idaho, and the state of Idaho is shutting down. It's a mandatory lockdown, and they're saying for 2 weeks.
So that would qualify?
Absolutely. That's a political risk policy that the government agency had to shut it down. The reason why we got more and more political insurance was in a case down in Dallas, unfortunately, several years ago when they had a big shootout, and it was a lot of police officers were killed. In the downtown Dallas was literally shut down for 4 days because it was a
crime scene.
Crime scene.
Yeah.
So anytime a government agency gets involved, and then restaurants specifically too with noroviruses. We were looking at noroviruses coming off cruise ships. All of a sudden, a customer comes walking in, and it gets people potentially sick. And you didn't serve them bad food. It wasn't foodborne illness. It was simply the fact you had a sick patient in your restaurant, and now the health and welfare department is requiring you to shut down for 3 days to sanitize your restaurant. And these guys run on thin margins, so even for 3 days, it could be detrimental to their business. These are typical things that we looked at for political risk. Again, we're seeing it obviously rise, and obviously it's glaring today with the pandemic. And government agencies are saying all sorts of things around, and they're basically even if you weren't a construction business, for example, or a one-man shop, and you did plumbing services. I mean, this is the kind of things that are being shut down right now. And unfortunately it is what it is, but those are all political issues. And then of course the third one we're looking at is contingency business interruption. That's obviously has another big one as well. This has also opened our eyes to a lot of other additional risks that we could be doing for our clients, putting endorsements on these core policies I just talked about, but adding to payroll, for example. If you want to cover your payroll for your employees during this downturn. So not just, typically what we do is look at loss of income and all those kinds of things, right? And we can talk about how we determine those losses. I think that's always important to understand. But the side of that, though, is, do you want to have endorsements to cover your debt? So your rent payments, your loan payments, all those things now start to become more glaring to us, like, oh man, we should have been offering these endorsements to our clients, so at least they can help offset some of these additional issues they're having right now. These we're learning too on some of this stuff, and we'll I tell our clients that, hey, we're going to have claims, these are going to happen, but so we do a full-on risk analysis. Like I said, most of our clients are going to come out with 7 to 8. We have dispute resolution. We certainly have brand protection. We have a robust business interruption for cyber. Cyber policies do a good job protecting your patient, or your clients, or your patients that have been compromised. but they don't do a great job with business interruption. Typically, there's a sub-limit, and it's a very small sub-limit. And, of course, brand damage that goes along with that, right? So these are things that we look at that again, business owners are self-insuring these risks for.
Yeah.
How do we better make that better for them? So that would be pretty in-depth risk analysis. Especially if they're in an industry we're familiar with, we knock it out pretty. We know what they're. We're always amazed how people do make money in this country, thank God, and we always get some business owner. We're like, you do what and provide what? And that's a great thing about this job, about this business too, is dealing with forward-thinking people, entrepreneurs, people that worry about what's keeping them up at night, and some of these things. And unfortunately, a lot of things just got added to that list, unfortunately.
Yeah, no kidding. And I'm starting, there's a lot of political backlash as well. So I'm starting to think of, you hear it predominantly with the larger companies. They've spent, the airlines have spent the last 5 years buying their stock back. And, as an executive of a company, you have a delicate balancing act where if you have cash, what do you do with it? Do I invest it in the company? If I don't have investment opportunities, do I dividend it to my shareholders, or do I buy back shares? How do I manage all of that? And so the traditional approach has been, over the last few years, buy back your stock. It's better than a dividend because there's no tax associated with it. And now there's this political backlash. And I'm starting to think, well, maybe the best thing would have been to buy an insurance policy. to have your own captive to cover an event like this.
I would tell you every publicly traded company has their own captive, and they don't care about the $2.3 million deduction. Microsoft's not going to get a product liability sold to them by Zurich, right? Zurich does have a brand damage policy. It covers up, I think you got to have a gross revenue of $100 million or more, but it's really designed for the big guys, right? The Russell 2000, publicly traded companies typically, and to some of the larger companies that are probably held as well. But this thing's been around, like I was saying earlier. Has it been 34 years? Am I just doing my math wrong? It's been 34 years.
It's 34.
Yeah, my gosh.
Good math. Well,
right.
So who would this not be appropriate for?
Who would it not be appropriate for?
Besides someone that doesn't have enough revenue, let's say there's a company that's doing $10 million of revenue. Is it wide enough to encompass everyone, or are there actually companies in that space where you may tell them, this isn't really for you?
I don't think it's so much the gross revenue. We've got clients that do a lot less than $1 million even on our books. A good example is the guys that do multi-level marketing. Typically they have very little overhead. And we get a lot, commerce is different today, right? It's interesting, right? We got a lot of clients that never even receive their products, but they work out of their house. Their overhead's very low for the most part. And our program still works. I think it comes down to who the client is. And I'm very forward with the clients. Our typical client is beyond the keeping up with the Joneses. Don't worry about getting a new house or owning 3 or 4 of them. Don't go out and buy new cars every year so they can take advantage of the 172 accelerated depreciation. When I get up and talk in front of CPA firms, CPA conferences and property casualty agents, and for that matter, financial advisors, I always talk about who is our client. And our client really is what we see as a married couple in their 50s, very successful. They put every dollar they ever made back in their business. Their business is who they are, so successful they ship their kids off to college, and then the kids come back and say, Mom and Dad, we don't want anything to do with the business. And now they're wondering what's going to happen to them. It's been interesting, Nick, is, so I've been in the financial world for a long time too, and everybody's talking about this transition of wealth, right? From from the greatest generation down to the baby boomers, and then eventually down to the next generation. What I find interesting is nobody's literally talking about, now these are the same businesses that are at risk today to close. Who's going to take over all these small businesses that Congress and everybody's worried about? We're not making more risk takers, unfortunately. And because risk is becoming one of those things, and not to get too political here, but risk is becoming less valuable. There's no reward. Why take the risk, right? And this will be another good example. I just did a video because the IRS doesn't like these programs. I'll just say right now, they've been abused. These are tax advantage vehicles, and by God, any tax advantage vehicles will have abuse around them. There's just no way around that. It's just the way the world works. But they've done recently some things that I think are egregious, to say the least, when it comes to the way they've approached some of our clients and other clients, for that matter, too, relying on these programs. But I don't think. I think the client today needs to be forward thinking, needs to be past their spending time. Everybody goes through that. And I'm not begrudging that. I'm not. If they want the boat, they want all that. But if you're not a saver, because this is a forced savings program, this requires you to build reserves, surpluses. You're going to be required to save money. You'll expense it out of your operating company, but you're going to leave that money there. And there's rules that we put in place to protect everybody that we work with.
Yeah.
We don't need to dive in deep on how the mechanism. Just know there's a 4-part test you have to go through. There's some regulations of this thing.
Well, I want to touch on that just a little bit.
Okay.
I want to know generally, like, are there limit? You had mentioned Microsoft, and you threw out a number of like $2.5 million. Is there a max cap? That's
2.3 per year is the most you can put into this program. Yeah, but it has to be actually determined. You just can't. The problem is, in the past, it was just made up numbers, and everybody just put as much money as they could into it, right? Relative to the risk being underwritten, and if you looked at some of the things that the other thing is back in the mid 2000s, a couple of smart estate tax attorneys got a hold of this tax code and really used it more for avoiding the estate tax play. So, it was great estate tax planning. Hey, I'm going to own an insurance company. I'm going to have an irrevocable trust own it. I'm going to have my kids own it. I'm going to, because it's worth zero today. And I'm going to pump $1 million. At that time, you can put up to $1.2 million into it. And you can put $1.2 million a year into that thing every year. And so what are you doing? You're devaluing your estate. You're moving the money into this captive. And now you don't own it. So you die, the money's already over there, and it doesn't become part of your estate. That's really great tax planning. It really was. Unfortunately, it was too good. I work with the IRS, get me once, don't get me twice. Unfortunately, there's tax advantages to the program, which means the premium that goes into these vehicles, now it's under 2.3 million. Like I said, it was 1.2. The PATH Act changed all that. And they also did away with the estate tax plan. So today, you don't get to use that vehicle as a state tax play. It's not being used that way. Unfortunately, it was hijacked for about 10 years. So if you look at the court cases that are in the pipeline right now and everything else, the IRS attacked these things based on the fact they were being used for not what the intention originally was set out to be. And that's really the self-insuring risk of business owners. How do you make it to where you can build up a tax advantage reserves and not try to use after-tax money to fight the fight, right? So all that aside, so there's some things there that through court cases and all that have set precedents, and we know what that precedence is now, and we make sure we adhere to it with our clients.
Yep.
You do have a pooled risk, meaning that clients are going to share in claims. That's one of the biggest hurdles we have to explain to clients, that you can't own 100% of your own risk and call yourself an insurance company. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
One of the basic principles of insurance is utilizing law of large numbers. And if you can't show the IRS how you're doing that, then it's going to be very difficult to call yourself an insurance company, because that is one of the basic principles of insurance.
So there is basically, kind of summarize what we just talked about, for the small to mid-sized business owner, there is an opportunity to cover business interruption due to the unforeseen circumstances like the one that we're going through now. There is an opportunity for them to perform some sort of risk management for those that don't want this to happen again.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, it's been around for 34 years, and a lot of clients, we work with CPAs all over the country. We have clients all over the country. Clay was saying earlier, his job is to go out and recruit other advisors to represent our products. We have a lot of other products besides this. I mean, I cut my teeth with the auto warranty program, and there's a reason why auto dealers want you to buy their warranty. It's because they're selling that risk in their back, and they're putting that risk in their own insurance company. I can talk about it another time, but just know those are great products. Those are great business strategies. There's the reason why Warren Buffett owns insurance companies. So I always like to throw that out there for everybody to understand. There's advantages you get by owning an insurance company that only insurance companies get. We know they're the strongest financial institutions in our country by far. And so all that aside, the advantages out there for business owners to understand it, but we got to get over some hurdles. We got to get the CPAs to understand that this is, they'll put this on the dirty dozen. The IRS doesn't want you to do this. Yeah, there's some tax advantages. There are some bad actors in our industry, unfortunately. And there's no self-governing of bodies to regulate this, by the way, right? Because why? This has been a tool that's been utilized by big companies for a long time. And typically the IRS isn't going to go knock on Microsoft's door and go, hey, are you doing this right? But they will knock on the door down to the guy that does service agreements for his heating company that signs a 3-year service agreement. And we can show him how, hey, you got a 3-year liability you just booked. We can take some of the portions you just sold your service warranty over and move it out of your company and drop it over here. Now you got tax advantage dollars to honor that for the next 3 years. That's efficiencies of business that small to middle market business owners need to understand. Sometimes I think small to middle market business owners think the deck is stacked against them by bigger competitors. And the reason why is because the way they structure internally that they don't even know about. And unfortunately, they're not using the CPA down the road that may have 1 or 2 partners or worse, a sole proprietor as a CPA, one-man operation. These companies are using Deloitte, 250,000 employees. They have no problem having their clients own a captive. They have more employees than the IRS does. Deloitte, when you hire Deloitte, I mean, you're spending 6 figures a year just on your CPA work.
Yeah.
Again, those are big companies. Small to middle market companies won't even get a sniff by Deloitte to do their tax returns. So they're not getting that kind of advice. Our hurdle is dealing with the smaller. A lot of our CPAs we talk to, they're still trying to figure out what the 2017 Reform Act did for their business owners. There's what entertainment's deductible and what's not. That's the conversation they're still trying to figure out. So they just don't have the amount of resources available to them like a Deloitte does. So we try to be that resource for them. And again, I think it's critical for all business owners to understand these tools are out there. I know they just passed the stimulus package today. It sounds like. I don't want business owners taking on more debt, even though they might be interest-friendly loans and all this other stuff out there. But here's what we hear from our clients, Nick. Our clients, bottom line, sleep a lot better at night, knowing they've been using our program for the last several years, and they've piled up tax advantage reserves, either through having their financial advisor manage the reserves for them, or just simply put in a money market account and let them staring at it. They just sleep a lot better at night knowing that. Now we're starting to have claims, right? We're hearing claims about, hey, what's crazy is most of our small employers, they want to continue paying for their employees because they're worried about they won't be able to get them back.
Yeah.
They have good continuity with their employees. They've trained them well. Why do they want to send them out they don't want them to go work for Amazon they may never get them back.
Well, that's the whole point of this particular recording, was to have that discussion, to let the insurance professionals that are watching this understand that there is this unique vehicle that exists, and unfortunately, this is not a train the insurance industry is going to step in front of. So we have to use the tools that we have at our disposal. And so we live in crazy times. We're going to, I want to continue this discussion. I want to be able to educate myself, but also the audience as well on this particular vehicle. So I'd like to have both of you back to get more into the nitty-gritty of it, on how these things work and how you get them set up and all of those things. But I think most importantly, I just wanted to share the message with the audience that these things exist. And for the business owner that does not ever want to go through this again, we may have something for you for that. So because of that, I wanted to have both you, Van, and Clay on, and I think we'll wrap it up there.
No, we appreciate your time, Nick, and thank you for the opportunity to get our message out. The other thing I would just tell you that we have a lot of training videos. We have because this is going to require somebody to think. You know, these are one of these tools you have to work on your business, not in your business, to understand it. And of course, we want to make sure all of our clients understand when these things start and why and the what fors. But no, we do appreciate your time, and you know, I'm telling our clients right now, hey man, you guys will get through this. This is a lifeline that you don't have. A lot of your competitors won't have. So if they take a step back, you can take a step forward, and that sometimes will give you the best advantage, and especially in the downturns when you're coming up out of the trough. And we were witness to that. So again, appreciate your time as well, Nick. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
Both of you, stay safe.
Yeah, you too. You as
Stay
well.
healthy.
You as well.
Okay, to everyone that's listening, in the show notes, I'll have links to everybody, including the training videos. So, Clay, Van, thanks so much.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.